Here today for our Biodiversity Week session. So we are going to be talking about building a nature positive business around getting your business started. So I'm Emer and I'm with Business For Biodiversity Ireland, and we are delighted to have Andrew Sheehan, who's founder of sustainabilityexamples.com, co-developing and co-delivering it with us today. So just briefly, a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be hosted on both our website, the BFBI website, and also the Sustainability Examples website. We also have a Q&A function on at the moment. So if you have any questions at all during the talk, just pop them in there and we will hopefully get time at the end of the session to address them. So briefly what we're doing today, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to Business For Biodiversity Ireland. I'm going to set the scene around what the situation is with nature loss and the biodiversity crisis we're in at the moment. A little bit on the BFBI discovery track, and then Andrew will come in from sustainabilityexamples.com and he's going to talk through the really exciting work he's doing at the moment. And then we should have time for some Q&As at the end. So firstly, who are we? So Business for Biodiversity Ireland came about on foot of the last National Biodiversity Action Plan. So we came about because of policy. And so we are Ireland's national business and biodiversity platform. We're supported by the National Biodiversity Data Centre, Natural Capital Ireland and Business in the Community Ireland. We also partner with Business for Nature, who I'll talk a little bit about in a second, and we also engage a lot with the European Business and Biodiversity Platform. We are part funded by the National Parks and Wildlife Service and the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and the rest of our funding comes through projects that we undertake and our membership. On the right-hand side of the screen here, it's just a snapshot of some of the organisations that we engage with, and you can see there's a real diversity of sectors and of sizes of businesses. So we really want to work with as many businesses and from as many different sectors as possible. So the overall aim of the platform, it's around empowering Irish businesses to assess their impacts and dependencies on nature and on biodiversity, with a view to managing and availing of all the associated risks and opportunities that come with that. We also support the implementation of the current National Biodiversity Action Plan. So Business for Biodiversity Ireland has six targets under the National Biodiversity Action Plan that we're responsible for. And the overall aim of that plan is to halt biodiversity loss in Ireland by 2030 and see no net loss of nature by that time as well, with net gain from 2030 onwards and then full recovery by 2050. Extremely ambitious, but the point of our National Biodiversity Action Plan is that it's a whole of society, whole of government approach, and that we all have a part to play in delivering on it. I just mentioned Business for Nature there, and I guess it was just to show you the kind of global networking that's part of what we do at Business for Biodiversity Ireland. So Business for Nature is a global coalition of influential organisations and companies as well, and there'll be a range of conservation organisations, NGOs and other corporates as well. So again, the main aim of working together like this is to act for nature and advocate for nature. Business for Biodiversity Ireland, we're also host partners with the Business for Nature, Now for Nature Accelerator programme. And again, this is like in a global context and shared messaging and resources as well. So I guess going back to basics, what do we actually mean when we're talking about biodiversity and nature? So biodiversity is basically every living thing on Earth, from the smallest bacteria to the largest tree or animal and everything in between. And we're part of biodiversity. So when we think of biodiversity, we can think of the genetic diversity, so all those different genetics, genes and traits within different species. We talk about the species diversity, so all the different species that we can imagine on the planet, and then ecosystem diversity as well, so all the different types of ecosystems. So when we talk of ecosystems, I straight away will think of like a grassland or a woodland or a peatland. So these are all these ecosystems that we have, and they're made of a community of organisms that interact with each other and their physical environment as well. So that's what an ecosystem is. And when we talk about nature, we're talking about all life on Earth, so all of our biodiversity, but also we're talking about our geology, water, climate, and all the other inanimate components that comprise our planet. So our mountains, rocks, wind, rain, everything together, including our biodiversity, is what we're talking about when we talk about nature. At the start of our workshop, like within the title, we have this term nature positive. And just to explain what nature positive is, so it's a global goal and it's defined as to halt and reverse nature loss by 2030 on a 2020 baseline and achieve full recovery by 2050. So basically, it's about having more nature in the world by 2030 than we had in 2020 and continued recovery thereafter. One of the key messages we highlight is explaining how nature underpins everything, our societies and our economies. I like this particular graphic from the Sustainable Development Goals. The one on the right-hand side here is the wedding cake infographic. And you can see from this, at the base of that, where it says biosphere, that is nature. That is what we're all relying on. Society is embedded in it, and so are our economies. And if nature is degraded or not functioning, it's going to impact on our societies, on our economies, on our businesses. So we talk about nature, we talk about ecosystems, we talk about ecosystem services. And what do we mean by that? So that's basically a person perspective of nature, and it's a lens that we use for communicating how important nature is to us. So an ecosystem service could be thought of as in what we get from nature. Now, nature has a right to be there for itself, whereas with ecosystem services, we're just considering it from the perspective of how we benefit from it. So we could straight away think of like our food, we can think of our water, we can think of the air, but there's many services that we rely on, and if they're degraded, they are going to have direct implications on us. So we consider ecosystem services around provisioning services. So like that, the products that we get from nature, so the natural resources, food, timber. We think about regulating services. So this is the service that nature provides in regulating our environment. So our clean water, clean air, climate regulation, flood regulation as well. And then we look at the cultural side. These are like the non-material benefits. So like the enrichment that we get from nature, recreation, the tranquility and well-being that we get. And there's also supporting services. So these underpin the other services. So think of things like functioning soil formation and nutrient recycling. So if our soils aren't degraded, how is our food supposed to grow? So again, all of these are linked together. This is recognised by policymakers. So in 2019, the Irish government declared a biodiversity emergency and a climate emergency. And we're now in 2026 and we're still in this emergency, and we really do need to be taking stronger action. I'm not going to go through all the policy on this. So everything I'm talking about today is on our discovery track, and that we work with our businesses through our other tracks as well. But the real point of this particular slide is to highlight that policy doesn't sit on its own. They're interacting with each other. So I'd mentioned our National Biodiversity Action Plan. That's fully aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework. It's fully aligned with the EU Biodiversity Strategy. And again, with our nature restoration law, the Nature Restoration Plan for Ireland that's just being drafted, fully aligned with the Nature Restoration Law, aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework, and contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals. So again, they're speaking to each other. And I guess the key question is, why is this happening? So what is driving biodiversity loss? So the 5 main drivers of biodiversity loss are land and sea use change, direct exploitation of organisms and species, climate change, pollution, and invasive non-native species. These are the main drivers of biodiversity loss. And one of the ones just to highlight at the moment around climate change is that climate change is driving biodiversity loss. And as we lose biodiversity, it is driving climate change. So it's a vicious cycle. However, what's really important to remember is that actions that we take for nature, they benefit our climate. So they are actions for climate change as well. So to just put it in a few statistics around the Irish context, so of the 31,500 species that we have, only 10% of them have been assessed for conservation status, and a fifth of these species are at risk of extinction. And the latest report on Ireland's EU protected habitats has found that 90% of our protected habitats are in an unfavourable conservation status. This is a really worrying trend. The last reporting period had found that 85% were in unfavourable conservation status. So we're totally going in the wrong direction there. And there was a recent report published in relation to our National Restoration Plan, and that found that Ireland would require up to 700 million annually to restore nature. But what's important to consider there as well is what is the cost to us if we don't restore nature, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. One of the questions as well that often comes up is like, yes, I care about nature, but what about my business? How does that relate to nature? And it matters to all businesses. Societies and businesses can't survive or thrive without the essential functions that the natural world provides. And the terms that we use around considering a business activities' impacts and dependencies on nature is around this dependencies, impacts, risks and opportunities due to business activities and due to nature loss that can be caused by that. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but there are clear risks around supply chain, supply of raw materials, brand reputation, financial risks in relation to nature loss, insurance claims, and then also the regulatory environment as well. There's also really important opportunities as well. So considering, really importantly, consumer loyalty, the cost savings that are there, stakeholder relationships that can be built, and of course, talent acquisition. So this slide here is really to kind of an overview of these very real physical risks to businesses due to the nature crisis. So there's global figures around the fact that, you know, our economies, the whole economy is ultimately dependent on nature and its services, with half of the world's GDP moderately or highly dependent on nature. So $58 trillion. Big figures, around 90% of man-made pressures on nature are due to how we produce our food, energy, infrastructure and fashion. So these are all really big figures. But this particular slide is to bring it back home to think more of, in the Irish context. These are the very physical risks of business. This is climate change. This is nature loss. So if we look at these images, and we could have pulled many from the different years, but this is from 23 and another image from January just gone. And it's really to look at it and imagine you live there or your business is there. What is the impact of this flooding on your business? How do you get to work? How does transport get to, from and through these areas? What's the impact on people? And the impact as well overall on your business. And then looking at this flooding, why is this happening? And this is where we're looking on the wider environmental context. Where are the ecosystems upstream of these rivers, and how are they, like, are they healthy? Are they completely degraded? Do they even exist anymore? So these are the very real things we need to be thinking about when we're thinking about the impact that biodiversity loss and nature loss has on our businesses and on our lives. And again, it's thinking of it as a complex system. So we live in a complex system and everything's interlinked. So like the cogs in a wheel, if there's an issue at one cog, it can have unintended consequences, whether positive or negative, to the rest of the system. So this one here, where we look at the interlinkages between climate, water, biodiversity, food, health, they're all interlinked. And say with climate change, we know a very positive action for that is planting trees. That's brilliant. However, if you plant trees in the wrong place, for example, on a peatland, that has a massive negative impact on biodiversity, but also on climate as well, and on water. So it's really thinking as all of these as a system of interactions as well. So basically what we do with Business for Biodiversity Ireland with our members, it's really about addressing these issues and working with our businesses to understand the relationship that they have, their particular sector, their particular business, that relationship that they have with nature, and how to take action to future-proof their business, to become resilient, and to take action that's of benefit for nature, biodiversity, and the business and people as well. Our programme is fully aligned with international regulation, best practice and standards, and we base our programme on the ACT-D framework. So this is the ACT-D framework, and this is an internationally used framework that was developed by Business for Nature, Capitals Coalition, the World Economic Forum, loads of different organisations involved in this, and it's really around providing a simple process that businesses can use to understand their dependencies, impacts, risks and opportunities due to nature loss. And one of the outputs, a really important one, is developing a credible nature strategy and then also implementing it, monitoring it, and ensuring that action has been taken. So the ACT-D framework stands for assess. So that's around assessing and prioritising and valuing the impacts and dependencies that your business has on nature. It's around committing to take action for nature and transforming the way your business works that protects nature and protects the business. And then what's really important is disclosing what it is you're doing. So publishing and disclosing your nature strategies and the work that you are doing in relation to nature. And in terms of our discovery track, we have a 10-step program, and this is a free program to go through, and it's on the website. And basically the point of our discovery track, this introduction phase, it's around ensuring that people have a baseline awareness and understanding of the relationship with nature and business, around the policy landscape, around the risks to businesses, and around developing a business case for nature action in your company. So it may be that you want to be able to talk about how your business can take action on nature, and you want to go to the decision makers, or you want to go to the CEO or the board around it. So this is just giving that baseline understanding. And for some businesses, they may want to continue on to our action track and our strategy track and our evolution track. And there are things that we can talk about at another webinar. But again, it's really just introducing a lot of these concepts, because there's an awful lot in the nature landscape at the moment, and it can be really overwhelming. And so we just want to make it more user-friendly and easier to understand these really critical relationships. So building on this, delighted that we have Andrew Sheehan, so the CEO and founder of sustainabilityexamples.com. Andrew's going to speak to us now about the work he's doing, and I am going to stop sharing my screen, and Andrew, you can share there.
Thank you, Emer. I'm just going to share my screen now. Really appreciate that. And can people see my...
Not yet, Andrew.
Hold on now. Okay.
It's coming through now. Perfect. That's us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Emer. Really appreciate that. And I'm conscious of time as well. You took the words out of my mouth, though, Emer. The discovery track is a fantastic example of a baseline starting point for businesses to get more involved with how biodiversity and nature is impacting on operations, on brand, and beyond. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the importance of visible impact. And thank you all for being here today. And it's great to be amongst like-minded people. And just to relate it to Emer's discussion as well, I'm like, there's one thing about policy, but there's another thing around practice. And quite often we want to be able to see what are other companies in our industry doing, who are they doing it with, and is it having an impact? And quite often examples are the best way to be able to showcase that around what are other people doing, and showcasing what organizations like BFBI are doing as well in this space. So some of Emer's stats reveal a very worrying trend, but we're also seeing other trends as well within the corporate action or the climate action and nature positive movement here in Ireland and internationally. So you can see here on this infographic, I'm a visual kind of guy, so hopefully this helps. On the y-axis on the left, we have a gauge on progress in nature positivity or climate action. And on the x-axis on the bottom, we have companies' propensity to share their progress. And what we're seeing is that when companies are not making much progress or not sharing at all, we're kind of defining them as the laggards in this movement. On the right of them, we have companies who are doing very little progress but are talking a lot about what they're doing, and we call them the greenwashers, as you've probably heard. In the top left, then we have companies who are making great progress, but are not talking about what they're doing. They're not getting any visibility or sharing what they're doing for numerous reasons we'll discuss. And they're the green hushers within this movement. And on the right, then we have our leaders. They're the organizations or the companies who are making great progress or who have full intentions of making great progress, and who are also sharing that progress openly. There's a fifth category of company type within the movement, and that's definitely coming to the fore, which you'll see there are emerging leaders. And they're the companies who are making great progress. They're also sharing their progress, but they're just not getting the visibility online or offline. And the movement is happening, guys. It's worth mentioning. We're seeing it across the board on sustainabilityexamples.com with the many companies today sharing their progress. But just taken from the Harvard Business Review recently in 2025, a report done there by Neil Hawkins and Kelly Cooper, 85% of companies are staying the course or expanding their efforts despite the headlines. So I wanted to mention that as well. There is progress happening. We're just not seeing it for two reasons. One, silence, and two, visibility. So we've mentioned those two types before. So silence is when companies have genuine climate action or nature positive efforts, but are just deliberately staying silent about them, often out of fear. So fear of greenwashing or regulation, hesitancy. They're afraid that it's not perfect, but nothing's perfect in the world of corporate sustainability, or they're staying silent for commercial reasons. They don't want to give away some of their secret sauce, or they don't want their competitors knowing what they're doing and how they're benefiting as a result, which is fair enough. And then the visibility issue, right? So when companies are sharing genuine sustainability and nature positive efforts, but they're just really struggling to get their efforts seen online and offline. And as a result, they're just not getting those opportunities or those benefits that Emer mentioned during her presentation around brand value, commercial uplifts, talent acquisition. So let's start with visibility. Why aren't these companies who are open to sharing their progress just not getting the visibility? Well, because online and offline, we can see and hear all this progress that's happening, but it's so fragmented and so silent or siloed. So it's at workshops, it's at events that we attend, we listen to podcasts. They're in 70-page reports that no one's really reading. They're on sustainability pages on websites, but that's only good if you know the website exists. And so a lot of this progress is happening, but it's just really fragmented. And as a result, the movement looks fragmented. And when a movement looks fragmented or silent, laggards prevail. The narrative gets taken over that nothing is happening when we know it is happening. Another reason why there's a visibility crisis is because of tech and mainstream media. So you might share something on LinkedIn about what your company's doing, but you'll find that the algorithm on LinkedIn or social media just isn't getting that onto people's news feeds. When it is getting onto someone's news feed, it only lasts around 20 seconds and then that individual forgets about it. So all that great progress, all the investment that you've made in nature positivity or climate action is only really lasting 20 seconds on social media, which is, is criminal from a ROI, from a return on investment point of view. SEO, so getting your sustainability pages on your website ranked on SEO or LLM, such as ChatGPT, is incredibly difficult, and it's a long game. And media, they just are not prepared to talk about it. Unfortunately, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't read. And so they're not talking about some of the progress that is happening. And for those that they are talking about, they're usually the large enterprise companies, whereas we want to really talk to those SMEs who are making progress, because they represent around 33% of Ireland's enterprise emissions. In Europe, it's actually 60%. So there's a lot of these companies who are resource strapped, but they're still making progress, and they want to share with their progress for those opportunities, for those commercial uplifts, but they're just not getting that visibility. As a result, we're seeing a lot of disadvantages from that visibility crisis, right? So Emer touched on a few of those opportunities, but those opportunities are only good for when your company is known to be taking progress. So the visibility crisis is causing a loss in commercial advantages, right? So if no one sees your work, it doesn't influence buying decisions. It doesn't differentiate your brand. It doesn't justify premium positioning, right? Also, reduce talent acquisition and retention. So today's talent, especially Gen Z, is actively looking for purpose-led companies, evidence of real action. And if your progress is invincible, then you're not going to get those gains. Similar reputational return on investment. So climate action initiatives, like, they require time, budget, internal effort, buy-in. Again, without visibility, there's no reputational equity built. Stakeholders don't connect your brand with impact, and so on and so forth. And so overall, the point we're trying to make here, you can read all of them there, is that you might be doing great things, or you might have full intentions of doing great things with Business for Biodiversity Ireland, for instance. But if you're not talking about what you're doing, if you're not sharing what you're doing, you're not going to take advantage of those commercial wins. But you're also going to do the movement and injustice. It looks like that there's nothing happening when we know there is action happening. The second problem then is the whole area of silence. So this isn't a visibility issue. This is a silence issue. So these are for companies who are reluctant to share their progress for reasons I called out, for fear of greenwashing or regulation, for hesitancy. So they're hesitant about not really being good storytellers, or really a fear of not being absolutely perfect, when it's all about progress over perfection. And as a result, the silence is also slowing everything down, right? So it creates a false reality of inaction. So when the companies actually doing the work aren't visible or talking about what they're doing, it looks like nothing meaningful is happening, and it reinforces criticism. It's all just greenwashing, or leaders appear to be the exception, not the norm. And this distorts the market's perception of progress, which is a big hindrance to the movement, and to more companies taking action. Um, it also slows down replication, guys. So most companies don't know what to do, where to start, what good looks like. We have great organizations like Business for Biodiversity Ireland, but when we can't see any examples of how companies have gone through uh, um, their um, um, their their journey to their discovery track, then it's hard for us to be able to go, oh, that sounds like a great idea for our company. So the more we can share about what we're doing with these great organizations like BFBI, the better. So silence from credible companies doesn't create humility, it creates a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled by noise, misinformation, and inaction as well. So again, just want to touch on a couple of those reasons why silence is not neutral in this process either. And it's not just my word for it, and some of the opportunities that Emer is seeing their members capitalize on as well. This is a really recent report that was included within the Creatives for Climate Green Shouting guide that was done in line with B-Lab. And you can see here some of their research and partners' research. 53% of consumers, this is up to 2025, 53% of consumers believe that a brand is doing nothing or hiding something if it's silent about its environmental initiatives. And as Emer rightly pointed out, the relationship between environment, biodiversity, and climate is all interlinked. And likewise, up to 31% of reputational advantage held by market leaders comes down to how they are perceived on environmental issues. And so there's real commercial upsides to be gained here from companies sharing their progress, but also when they're sharing that progress, to have that progress very visible and not barriered by algorithms, large media, SEO, and so on and so forth. And so this is where we kind of brought in, this whole area of, well, look, we know where the problems are, right? We have BFBI educating us in terms of what we can do. And then when we're doing that, how can we share it confidently in a safe and supportive place where there's no fear of greenwashing, and where progress is valued over perfection? And what if there was the world could see what's actually being done in real time every single day? And that's where we kind of felt that a platform like sustainabilityexamples.com could be our answer. And when we did some quick bit of market research, we quickly found that the term sustainability examples as a key phrase is searched over 100,000 times per month globally across Google and LLMs such as ChatGPT. And so there's a demand from stakeholders wanting to find these examples, wanting to find these companies who are taking action and engage with them through applying for their jobs, working with them, partnering with them for scope 3 reasons, and so on and so forth, but also a platform where solutions are very present, such as Business for Biodiversity Ireland and their discovery track. And so a little bit about the company, without going too much into detail, but all of the examples on our platform are also tied to the UN SDGs. So our values are very much in line with our partners there at Business for Biodiversity Ireland. Our mission is very simple: to provide measurable recognition and faster commercial upsides for those companies who are taking action. And those companies can be taking action. They can share examples of historic initiatives that they've done, such as energy initiatives, nature initiatives, or present initiatives. So what are you doing now, and what do you hope to achieve? And then our purpose on the back of that mission is to ultimately inspire more companies to start taking action, share their progress with confidence, and accelerate the corporate sustainability movement in Ireland and globally. And we seem to be having a bit of an impact. So we launched the platform last year, and already we have over 110 companies currently sharing their progress and contributing to collective knowledge sharing and getting those commercial uplifts, as I mentioned, as a result. Over 200 examples of solutions such as Business for Biodiversity's solutions, but also examples of initiatives. So what other companies are doing in terms of energy initiatives, waste initiatives, nature initiatives. And we have a growing network of over 7,000 and a monthly impressions or monthly views of 12,000 because of that high volume keyword sustainability examples being Googled so many times. But also we're starting to drive a lot of direct traffic. And we're getting a huge engagement rate of nearly 90%. And that's because the platform is full of like-minded people who are there to discover and champion companies who are taking action. So that's a little bit of an overview. On the bottom, you can see our LinkedIn results, all going in a really positive direction as well. And so it's a really great, friendly, and supportive space to be in to start sharing your progress. So I won't go too much into detail here, but really I wanted to kind of give you an idea of the networking effect and the ecosystem that we're building and that we'd love for you to be part of. So on the left-hand side, there's two real types of companies. There are companies who are sharing examples of their green initiatives or their nature positive initiatives. And then there's companies sharing examples of their solution in action, such as case studies. On the right-hand side, then, we have those stakeholders and policymakers in society who are actively looking to engage with and discover these companies who are taking action. And in the middle is the ecosystem where companies are starting to engage with stakeholders. Stakeholders are starting to engage with companies. And that's where we're starting to inspire more companies to start taking action as a result. Very quickly, in terms of how it works, when you go to the homepage today, guys, you'll see it's very simple. You'll just see a whole list of examples that were recently shared. And you can filter examples by industry, by SDG, by category. So it's very easy to hone in on examples that will guide your own journey or will help you to discover a solution that you didn't know exist that will help you implement your strategy. It's free to share your examples of your green initiatives on the platform, and it always will be. And for any of the paid features, such as more visibility and more, then there's a unique discount code for BFBI members. So that's also very another great reason to join BFBI and to go through the discovery track. So what does an example page look like? I won't go into too much detail, but it gives your location. It shows what the SDG is tied to. It gives you a call to action where people can go to learn more about your company. People can upvote examples, and at the end of each month, we name the initiative of the month and the company of the month. And in each example, it's just like a Word document. You can upload rich data or rich media, should I say, so videos, imagery, just explain your example and the progress you're hoping to make. Similarly, your company page, it links back to your company website. So again, always with a view of driving more traffic to your brand and driving those commercial uplifts, and it's really good for Google that we're linking back to your website. And your company page will historically list all of the examples you shared. So a really good resource to share on award nominations or tenders to give people an idea of your real world progress in action. And in the dashboard in the back end, you'll be able to see, well, what kind of traction are we getting here for sharing our progress? You'll be able to see how many people have seen your progress, how many people have clicked through to your website, how many people have upvoted your examples and your progress. So again, all great marketing KPIs to stay the course of progress and to keep on investing into programs like BFBI and sharing that progress as a result. So very, very quickly, what should we share? Well, we just say share with confidence. So share examples that educate, but also inspire. So what should you share about? So if you're just embarking on BFBI's discovery track, that's a great example to share. If you've gone through the discovery track, even better, because you can tell the world what was involved, who did you have to convince internally, what teammates were involved, what did you learn from it, what's the impact been on some of your nature positive initiatives since. And then lastly, know how to communicate it. So know what makes a great example. Now we have an AI storyteller to help you with those examples. So if you have something in your mind, the AI storyteller will craft it for you using a storytelling best practices. But very simply, we always say the best examples are honesty. So tell them honestly, be vulnerable, mention that you don't have all the answers. Nobody does. There's no such thing as perfection. Be inclusive. So mention the teammates that are involved in those initiatives. Share some results if you have any to date, or share results that you hope to achieve. And then verification. Use our verification service to help verify the examples that drives more trust on our platform as well. So that's a little bit about us and how it works. And then that's how we're kind of really tying sustainabilityexamples.com into that sustainability and climate action movement in Ireland. So thank you so much for your time. And I'll exit my screen now to answer any questions you have for myself or Emer. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks a million for